say it was for a different reason than it is. But here, after how many times since Sandy Hook have we said no more? And here we find ourselves again saying no more. I would love to say that we will not have to say no more again. But what I can, for myself, stand here and profess to you is that I will be silent no more. We have to have accountability from those that represent us. For far too long, we've let things go, and it's time for change. Either change in policy or change in representation. But there has to be a change. But before we get started, I want to take just a moment of silence to reflect on the tragic loss in Uvalde, Texas, and in so many other places and communities that are grieving right now because of gun violence. So let's take a moment of silence. Since December 14th, 2012, in Sandy Hook, mass shootings continue to happen. According to the Gun Violence Archive, from January of 2013 to July of 2020, there was only 1 week, the week of January 5th, where there was not a reported mass shooting in the United States. The Gun Violence Archive defines a mass shooting as an event where 4 or more people, excluding the shooter, were shot at the same general time and location. We said no more after Sandy Hook, but clearly what we are doing is not working. I emailed a lot of elected officials about this rally today, and I got some responses back. All of them declining to be here for a number of reasons. But one of them actually tried to place the blame on teachers, counselors, and judges by not holding students accountable for their behavior so that those things would actually show up on a background check that is required for gun purchases. And then they went on to ask me what I was going to do to protest abortion, since that is murder. And it dawned on me, and I read this on Facebook, and every once in a while God can use Facebook to get a point across. Somebody posted on Facebook that it is sad that there are people in Washington more concerned about regulating a woman's body than they are about our kids making it through recess. That is a profound statement. Now, my response to this person was just that they were deflecting, and I respectfully declined to answer their question because it had nothing to do with what we're here to talk about today. But clearly, and they indicated that there are laws in place. Well, clearly what is in place is not enough. Clearly what is in place is not working, and more needs to be done. And I stand before you as a member of the clergy, and I believe in prayer and the power of prayer. But thoughts and prayers alone are not enough. We've had thoughts and prayers time and time and time and time again. And now is the time for some change and some policies and some real representation from those of us from those who are tasked with protecting us. I just want to talk a little bit about some bills that at the federal level that have completely stalled, but they're there, they're just stalled. H.R. 1446, which is the Enhanced Background Check Act. It closes the Charleston loophole, as it is commonly referred to. Currently, some licensed gun sales can go through before a required background check is ever done. This happened in Charleston with the Charleston shooter at Mother Emanuel Church. This law, if passed, would increase the amount of time from 3 business days to 10 for a completed background check. When I was called to serve this congregation as pastor, I had to go through a rigorous background check, and it took almost 30 days. 30 days of a background check for me to proclaim the good news of the gospel to people. 3 days to purchase a firearm. It's sickening. Another bill, H.R. 8, the Bipartisan Background Check Act of 2021, would expand background checks for all firearm sales or transfers in the country. Currently, background checks are not required for gun sales or transfers by unlicensed or private sellers. And currently, every state has their own variation of the rules because Washington is frozen on the issue. And states have had to step in and make their own policies. There is one that was just introduced by Senators Booker, Menendez, and Blumenthal, and it's called the Federal Firearm Licensing Act. And when I talk about common sense gun laws and common sense reform, I think about this bill. Here's what it says about the bill. Several studies have shown that licensing laws reduce gun violence in states that have enacted them. According to the Giffords Law Center, Connecticut saw its gun homicide and gun suicide rates decrease by 28 and 33%, respectively, after passing a state licensing law. In contrast, after Missouri repealed its firearm licensing law, the state saw a 47% increase in its gun homicide rates and 24% increase in the gun suicide rate. Senator Booker says if you need a license to drive a car, you should need one to buy and possess a gun. That sounds like common sense to me. Senator Menendez says the Federal Firearms Licensing Act would put in place a certification process that includes firearm safety training and a thorough criminal background and identity check, requiring a licensee be 21 years of age. That would have prevented an 18-year-old from purchasing 2 assault-style weapons and going into Robb Elementary School just this week. An 18-year-old who, by the way, can't even buy alcohol, bought 2 of those weapons. So under this law, if passed, in order to obtain a federal firearm license, the bill would require the following: certification that the individual completed firearm safety training, which must include a written test and a hands-on training to ensure safe use and accuracy. Completion of a criminal history background check, and submission of fingerprints, proof of identity, and verification that the individual is at least 21 years old. Now, some of our representatives in recent times and elections have harped on the fact that we need to show proof of who we are at the ballot box, and you have to have this form of ID and this form of ID. So why would you not require the same thing for gun purchases? Again, it just sounds like common sense. And the federal firearm licensing must be renewed every 5 years, at which point the applicant will have to go through a background check and undergo firearm safety training again. That's just one of the bills that has been introduced most recently, and I would like to be optimistic and say that it's going to go through, but we know how things get stalled in Washington. So lastly, I want to talk about Florida, since states have their own rules. In Florida, you do not have to have a permit or a license to buy a gun, and registration is not required. Now, you must be 21 years old or older unless you are in law enforcement, a corrections officer, or in the military. You do need a license to carry a concealed weapon. And scary to me is there is no limit on the number of firearms you can own or buy in a single transaction in Florida. A background check is required, and it takes 3 business days. There are some restrictions. If you are convicted of a felony, if you're dishonorably discharged from the military, if you are adjudicated mentally defective or involuntarily committed to treatment, or if you're convicted of domestic violence, those are restrictions that would prevent you here in Florida from purchasing a firearm. While that is of some comfort, I am still concerned. States should not be making these rules up as they go and individually. We need something from the federal government. We need action from the federal government. And I think that we all know why we don't have the action from the federal government, because there's so many different organizations and lobbyists in the back pockets and funding these politicians and representatives. And until that changes, very little is going to change. So today, what I hope we can do is start a conversation, and that we will start holding our elected officials accountable. And they either change their behavior or we change them. If you're here and you're not a registered voter, there are voter registration forms in the lobby for you to take home. If you have neighbors who aren't registered voters, take those home and give those out. We need people to vote. If they won't hear our voices when we speak out loud, they will hear us from the ballot box. That's sometimes the only way we're going to get to them. But we have an obligation to do this, because I am tired of turning on the news and hearing of another shooting. I am tired of parents sending their kids to school wondering if they're going to come home that day. I'm tired of press conferences. I'm tired of representatives and senators standing before us screaming how things need to change, and then nothing changes. Something has to be done, and we will be silent no more. That is my hope. I want to invite now, you're going to hear from 2 educators who are on the front lines every day. I made a comment to Mindy today that I can't imagine how traumatic this is when something like this happens and you're an educator. And I wanted, it was very important that we hear from educators today. So I'm going to first invite Mindy to come and share a few thoughts.
I would like to thank the Spring Hill United Church of Christ and Pastor Martinez Colon for inviting me here today. When I sat down to write my speech, I thought I would start with listing every school shooting that had happened since I began teaching in 1998. It became very apparent that we would be here a really, really long time. So just a few statistics. Since 1998, Columbine High School, 74 shootings have occurred on college and university campuses. My oldest son just graduated from college, and my middle son is in college. 122 shootings on high school campuses. I have a high school student as well. 24 shootings on middle school campuses. I'm a middle school teacher. And 11 shootings on elementary school campuses. Actually, I should have said I'm a K-8 teacher, so all the way from the babies. 304 deaths, 485 injuries. But you can Google all of that. I want to talk to you about what happens inside a school. You may have seen on Facebook the video of the plan for one school district, how everybody shoots into action, how they monitor, how there are cameras, and there are surveillance devices that the teachers can alert. I work at a school that has all of that. We go into what is called ATP, Active Threat Protocol. Our babies know that term. They should not know that. When we go into ATP drills every single month, our students from kindergarten through 8th grade take every piece of furniture they can and they erect a barricade in front of the doors and windows. Heavy furniture. Then they find the hard corners. You know what a hard corner is? Because our kids do. A hard corner is the corner of the room that you can't be seen in. Teachers, we enter a room and we automatically look for the hard corner. It's where we are. Our students look for hard corners. And then they find anything they can. A stapler, a book, a backpack. Because should that active threat get through the locked doors, break through the window, get through the barricade, our last line of defense is to throw things at them. So our students are armed with staplers against AK-47s. All of our teachers have on their phones and on their tablets and on their computers an app to put into place the ATP protocol to alert authorities where the gunman may have been seen or heard. But here's the reality. A few years back, there was an armed gunman that had robbed a house in the development across the street from my school. The sheriff's office called our school. Now, the sheriff's office trains in this extensively, right? Well, the first thing they did wrong was to tell us there was an active threat. An active threat means somebody's on your campus with a weapon. We went immediately into active threat protocol. We should have just been on a lockdown because we were not actually in danger. And by the time the active threat protocol had been called, they had already gotten a hold of the perpetrator. We went into an ATP though. I was in the hallway because it was my lunch 20 minutes. Yes, 20 minutes. We immediately got every student in the hallway into a classroom. My nearest classroom was kindergarten, 5 and 6-year-olds. They know every month that we practice. We call it stranger danger practice. And they knew because their teachers had not told them this was not a drill. 2 children panicked, and they ran into each other. One boy got a gash in his forehead, the little girl got a split lip. There was blood everywhere. The other children started panicking because there was blood and because they didn't know what was going on. So here were the teachers trying to help 5-year-olds upend tables. We have put the onus of protecting themselves on 5-year-olds when adult politicians refuse to protect those babies. When they finally gave us the all clear, the clinic was full. Children with stomach aches, throwing up, headaches. That's their body's trauma response. They were so traumatized, some children didn't come back to school the rest of that week. The fear, just the fear. I was listening to the radio yesterday, and they were interviewing people at the NRA convention. And a gentleman said, it's the price of doing business. Our babies are collateral damage in some people's mind. So to those people I say, go into your nearest elementary school and you pick 19 children and you look them in the eye and you decide which one of those children are collateral damage. whose babies don't get to come home from school because you want your freedom, whose children, grandchildren, nieces or nephews, which teachers don't get to go home to their families because they laid down their lives for their babies. Since 1998, more school shootings than I could list, and enough is enough, is enough, is enough, is enough, is enough. And it has to happen at the ballot box, and not just nationally. City council, county commission, school boards, judges, state representatives, state senators. If you cannot commit to keeping children safe, if you cannot commit to keeping communities safe to shop at their only grocery store, then you shouldn't have your job. Because if I can't keep children safe, I lose my job. So, this is the time. This is no longer an agree to disagree moment. I can agree that if you like pineapple on your pizza, that's your prerogative. I cannot agree that our children are collateral damage, the price of doing business in the greatest country on earth. Thank you.
There's a little part of me that wants to say that might be more traumatic than reading that Johnny has two daddies. But let's ban books. Let's ban books, by all means. Let's ban books. I would like to invite now Mindy's husband, James, to come forward, also an educator, and he didn't tell me to say this, but I'm going to say it. This is a man that not only talks about change, but is trying to enact it, and he is actually a candidate for Pasco County School Board.
A second to get to my speech. Thank you again, congregation, Reverend Chancey, for the opportunity to speak. As stated a second ago, I am a school teacher, but I'm also a candidate for District 1 Pasco County School Board. We were members of this church, 3 or 4 years ago. So thank you for everything that you've done for our family, but for everything that you do for this community, especially having events like this. I'm going to approach it a little bit differently than Mindy did. Same kinds of stories. We do the lockdowns on a regular basis. I deal with high school students, and many of you can imagine that by the time they get to me, they're tired of doing those drills. They take them a little bit less serious until something like this happens. With that being said, in a different direction, American teens are twice more likely to die from gun violence than poisoning and cancer. Of the top 5 causes of death in teenagers, gun violence outranks all of them when you add them together. In fact, according to the information by everytimeresearch.org, death by gun violence is greater than 3 of those top 5 that I mentioned a second ago. This figure also includes the rise in suicide by teenagers that has grown over the past decade. Black Americans are disproportionately impacted by gun violence. They experience 10 times the gun homicides, 18 times the gun assault injuries, and nearly 3 times the fatal police shootings of white Americans. Current laws impact these figures. You mentioned some of them. Here in the state of Florida and other states, there are things called stand your ground. These laws allow people to shoot and kill in public even when you're safely walking by and away from danger. These laws threaten public safety by encouraging armed vigilantism. In the stand-your-ground states like Florida, homicides where white men kill a black person and are deemed justifiable 5 times more than when the situation is reversed. Florida Guardians laws, which was put into effect about 3 years ago, allow trained personnel, people in my position, teachers, school administrators, to carry concealed carry on campus. PolitiFact investigated claims that in a normal police situation, 30% of their bullets miss the target. These are trained professional police officers. In some jurisdictions, they were able to claim that it was less than 50%. However, when they tracked for gunfight situations, most ranked around 20%, hitting their target. With the Guardian law, they're asking teachers to stand in front of classrooms that they've taught, students that they have mentored and built relationships with, to then pull out a gun and use it, and hope that they hit on their first try. It goes against everything that educators have gotten into the classroom to do. Ironically, this is the same state, as we've mentioned a couple of times, that challenges my ability to choose books for my students to read. What can go in the library of our schools? What topics we can talk about? Yet, they want to give me the ability to have a loaded gun to shoot with my students. Loopholes in background checks, as you mentioned before, or gun show loopholes, will also make it too easy for students or people to get guns. Specifically, federal laws require background checks for all gun sales by licensed gun dealers, but it does not require them for guns sold by unlicensed sellers, like dealers that sell online or gun shows. And although background checks have prevented over 4 million individuals from obtaining firearms, more needs to be done. Remember, the shooter from Uvalde, Texas, purchased his guns legally. A military-style weapon was purchased legally. That same weapon, only 2 decades earlier, would have been illegal to purchase, because in 1994, President Clinton signed the assault weapons ban, which banned the AR-15 and other similar type rifles. Mass shootings went down in that decade. Yet in 2004, the ban was lifted and sales skyrocketed. What we need to do now, we've mentioned it several times, is to talk to our legislators, our local leaders, our elected officials, and we need to push for the following things, in my opinion. Number 1, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We must convince them to reinstitute the ban on semi and fully automatic weapons. We need to push for criminalizing the 3D printing of weapons. We must convince these same legislators that arming teachers is never the solution. Having access to a gun in the classroom increases the likelihood that a student will have access to a gun and that someone will be shot outside of an active shooter incident. Schools are places for books and backpacks, not weapons. Districts should use this money to hire more social workers, psychologists, trained professionals who can work with these individuals to tell them that the best solution for what they're feeling is not violence. We need to teach our students that disagreements can be talked out. In conclusion, I leave you with a tweet that I read just recently. To everyone saying changing laws won't realize that the person who committed the crimes in Uvalde waited until his 18th birthday to buy his legal weapons and ammo. If the law had been 21, maybe he would have spray painted his frustrations. 19 children, 2 adults, teachers, would still be here today. Enough is enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. I now would like to invite Nicole Watts from Moms Demand Action to the stage. This is an organization that has been working tirelessly to impact change. And so welcome, Nicole.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you so much to the Spring Hill United Church of Christ and Chance for inviting Moms Demand Action here today. My name is Nicole Voss, and I am a volunteer with the Florida chapter of Moms Demand Action. I found my way to Moms Demand Action in 2019 after a summer of senseless mass shootings, with the El Paso shooting on my daughter's 14th birthday being the final straw that sparked me to do something. You see, my best friend's husband is from El Paso, and he's always talking about the city and his large family who still live there today. Raul is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He's always smiling. He is certainly the nicest guy my best friend had ever dated. And when I saw the news, I immediately thought of Raul and his family. I was terrified that they were one of the 23 people who were shot and killed, or part of the other 23 people who were wounded while shopping at Walmart. All because an armed extremist, domestic terrorist, traveled hundreds of miles from his home to kill as many Hispanic people as he could. Thankfully, Raul's family was safe, but as we know, many families were not. It was that moment that I knew that I had to arm myself with knowledge and facts and get off the sidelines to fight against this senseless gun violence epidemic. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Moms Demand Action, let me take a few minutes to explain who we are. We are a grassroots movement of volunteers fighting for public safety measures that can help protect people from gun violence. We are a single-issue organization. We are nonpartisan. We work in local communities like ours to encourage a culture of responsible gun ownership. We know that gun violence is preventable, and we're committed to doing what it takes to keep our families safe. Moms Demand Action was founded by Shannon Watts, a mother of 5 who started a Facebook group the day after the Sandy Hook tragedy in 2012. Shannon's message at that time was simple and clear, and it still resonates today, a decade later. That message is that all Americans can and should do more to reduce gun violence. The online conversation in 2012 has turned into a movement of moms, dads, students, families, concerned citizens, and survivors working together to end the crisis that is plaguing America. We really are mothers and others. Today, we are stronger than ever with chapters in every state, and within these chapters, we have hundreds of local groups. In fact, more than 8 million supporters and hundreds of thousands of volunteers across the country have joined us to bring gun safety awareness into our communities. From Buffalo to Uvalde, we are witnessing the violent dystopian world that the gun lobby has created and our lawmakers have enabled. We hear the same thoughts and prayers over and over again, but it doesn't save lives and it doesn't change laws. There is a daily toll of gun violence, and 110 Americans are killed with guns each day. And that value is a new value, used to be 100. We are told the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Unfortunately, there was a good guy with a gun in Buffalo. His name was Aaron Salter. Aaron Salter was an armed guard, a former police officer, and he was killed while trying to protect others because he was outgunned. The bad guy was armed to the teeth with deadly weapons and tactical gear. There is no reason why any reasonable, law-abiding citizen should be outfitted with the gear of a soldier. In Uvalde, there was police with guns that did not stop the carnage and killing in a classroom full of 4th graders and their teachers. Again, we see another shooter that is armed to the teeth with deadly weapons and tactical gear. Let me repeat, there is no reason why any reasonable, law-abiding citizen should be outfitted with the gear of a soldier. We are told guns don't kill people, people kill people, yet we still can't get our officials to pass background checks on people for every gun sale. Gun violence, as has been mentioned, is now the leading cause of death for children and teens in the U.S. This is a crisis unique to the United States. The response from lawmakers, backed by the gun lobby, is that we need more guns. This is what they're saying, right? Armed teachers. But if more guns made us safer, we would be the safest country on earth. Some politicians are held hostage by a gun industry that is getting rich off the deaths of our children in our communities. We deserve, as Americans, to feel safe dropping our kids off at school, going to the grocery store, congregating in places of worship, attending a concert, walking down the street, and going about our lives. We can't get discouraged. We have the power right here in our community to make a difference and to stop these senseless killings. Even though these tragic events send shockwaves of pain and heartache through families and communities, mass shootings are largely preventable through evidence-based policy and interventions. We all want to keep our families safe. Moms Demand Action fights for policies that are proven to reduce gun violence, protect children, and again, make our communities safe. We fight to change the culture of gun ownership by encouraging a culture of gun safety. And talk about the importance of secure storage of firearms to keep guns out of the hands of children and teens. For example, we have a program called Be Smart for Kids, which is up at the front. And again, it's a framework designed to help parents and adults normalize conversation about gun safety. So how can you get involved and join me in this movement? One simple thing that you could do right now is you could text the word ACT, A-C-T, to 64433. So if you want, you can get out your phones, start a text message to 64433, and just send the word ACT, A-C-T. You can learn more about Moms Demand Action and our Gun Sense Action Network by visiting our website, momsdemandaction.org. We have an app you could download, which will, if you allow it, it will text you information about local events. It will also give you calls to action, such as sending texts, emails, and making phone calls. Second, you could join our Florida chapter and volunteer. We have so many ways for you to volunteer locally. If you can't volunteer, but you want to support the cause, the movement, you can donate money to our Florida State chapter. We can't accept cash. We do appreciate the offer, but we do have a website that you can donate to directly. There's a QR code at the front. Third, which I love that you guys are talking about this, that we need to hold our elected officials responsible and accountable for their inaction. If you want, you can text the word BOLD, B-O-L-D, to that same number, which is 64433. When you text the word BOLD to 64433, they will send you a link. You can click in the link, you can fill out your name, your email, and it will populate a message to our senators. So something very easy. I would also encourage not only texting, but writing postcards, letters, making phone calls. If they are not doing their jobs, vote them out. That's exactly what we want. Again, I want to thank you to your congregation for inviting us here and to Chance. I do look forward to connecting with you, and together we can, and we will, and we must make a difference because this can't go on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. Now we're going to move into some action steps that we can do here. One of those is at the table in the back of the sanctuary by the thermostats, and feel free to bump those down if you would like to. It's getting really hot in here. That's why we didn't meet outside in Florida. There is a table back there. We already have pre-addressed envelopes for representatives for Pasco, Hernando, Citrus, the governor, and the state of Florida, and they're already self-addressed. There's envelopes back there as well. You can peel off the self-addressed label, put it on the envelope, take it home, and you can handwrite a letter if you would like. We do have some form letters that you can use as templates to go by, or you can sign those and put dates on them and put those in the mail. However you choose to do it, but we really want to get the word out to our representatives that we are serious about this, and the time for talking has come to an end. So there's a table there for that. I've already mentioned to you that there's voter registration forms in the middle of the lobby. And over here under the TV and also in the table in the lobby, there are poster board with markers. I encourage you, if you feel so inclined, to make a sign. Someone made this one, I did not. I can tell you that that's not my writing. But you can make a sign, and then for those of you that want to and feel comfortable, we're going to go out by Mariner, out by our sign, and for a few minutes, and just build some awareness by holding up signs for people that are driving by on Mariner. However you choose to get involved and however you choose to act, please, please make a commitment to be silent no more. Thank you for coming.